was saying, I'm Marvetta Coleman with the Children Matter Action Fund. And the Children Matter Action Fund is a newly formed organization focused on helping citizens connect with lawmakers, particularly on critical issues affecting children across the Commonwealth. We support the Start Strong Pennsylvania, the Pre-K for PA, and the home visiting campaigns. And we're really excited to launch this candidates conversation for Montgomery County today. We actually will be doing about 12 or 13 conversations across the Commonwealth. We kicked off our first one last evening in the western part of the state. And so we really want to extend our thanks to all of the candidates that have joined us this morning, along with all of the members of our audience and our program participants. We know that early learning education for our children is important, not only for the children, but certainly for their families. We know that we need to be looking at not only today's needs and the immediate needs, but we need for our legislators to look at the long-term strategies, to see this from a lens that looks at the future as well as the environment in which we're existing today, to ensure that childcare and early learning education systems are in place to provide children and their families with the kind of high quality and access to high quality care and early education that many of our providers are delivering to the children of the Commonwealth. I want to let you know that all candidates in House Districts 26, 51, 151, 147, 152, and 154 were invited to participate. And so we certainly extend our thanks to those who have joined us this morning. In addition to the information that you're going to be hearing on the conversation this morning, we encourage you to make sure that you go to the Children Matter Action Fund website. And it's just that, it's childrenmatteractionfund.org. We have posted the surveys that we received from many of the candidates, along with the fact that they have pledged to be champions for children. Now, we're going to turn to our program. If you turn on KYW radio, you have undoubtedly heard the voice of our moderator. Sherry Gregg is a voice that we all recognize whenever we turn on the radio, and she is reporting on any number of community, legal, social justice issues and events within the Delaware Valley. She also produces the host of Flashpoint, and we are just excited that her signature sign-off that so many of us are familiar with is going to be shared in terms of her signature sign-on with us as today's moderator for this candidates conversation. Sherry?
Thank you so much, Marvetta, for that beautiful introduction. And good morning and hello to everybody who is tuned in today. Congratulations to the Children Matter Action Fund for organizing yourselves around such an important and vital issue. Children are our future, and their well-being is of vital importance to all of us. Across the state, nearly 500,000 children face barriers to healthcare, education, and enrichment caused by poverty. Research tells us that ensuring the safety and nurturing the intellect, creativity, and self-confidence of children raised in poverty improves their chances of succeeding later in life. And in Pennsylvania, poor children suffer because of lack of resources and programs to meet their needs. Tens of thousands of children are uninsured, and a majority of low-income children attend schools that have far less resources available for their education than their well-off peers, and far less than half of the at-risk young children in the Commonwealth have access to the benefits of high-quality early learning programs that are proven to boost their educational and lifetime chances of success. And advocating for these children, of course, is the focus of the Children Matter Action Fund. And today we're going to be talking to a number of candidates that are here to talk specifically about what they would do to ensure in the middle of this pandemic, what we're dealing with right now, the safety and well-being and the educational success of our children. I want to just quickly mention our candidates, and then I'll introduce some of the program participants to give their opening remarks, and then we'll jump right in. We have, and I haven't seen everybody here, and so I apologize. We have Paul Friel, House District 26, Jonathan Casa, House District 151, Nancy Gunst, and I hope I'm not mispronouncing your last name, House District 152, Jill Deneen, House District 147, and Napoleon Nelson, House District 154. We'll be hearing from them today. Now I'd like to introduce our program participants for opening remark. First up is Kristen DeDominic of the Bucks Montgomery County Collaborative. Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Good morning. So my name is Kristen DeDominic, and I'm the coordinator for the Bucksmont Collaborative. So we are a nonprofit membership organization, and we're comprised of more than 80 nonprofit organizations, funders, and community-minded businesses. So we're about fostering information, building dialogue, and taking action around critical community issues like this one, with that goal of just aiming to improve our communities and strengthen nonprofits. So our focus for this year will be anchored in social justice work. So we want to convene conversations and build community around equal rights, opportunity, and treatment, and how we can work towards a social good. So we invite the community into this work. We are stronger together. So if you'd like to learn more about the collaborative and how we can tackle challenges and build opportunities to further social equity and community, please reach out. Love to connect with you. And I'll just do one quick plug that was allowed. So on October 9th from 9 to 10:30, we'll be hosting a congressional candidates forum with PCCY, Pennsylvania Health Access Network, and Bucks County Women's Advocacy Coalition. And we'll be hearing from candidates from the 1st, 4th, and 5th districts. So if you'd like to join us for this discussion, we can share that link, get you registered, and we can continue these important conversations. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Next up is Aisha Cooper of the Pottstown Area Health and Wellness Foundation. Welcome, Aisha.
Thank you, Sherry, and thank you to the Children Matter Action Fund. My name is Aisha Cooper, and I'm a program officer with the Pottstown Area Health and Wellness Foundation. We are a private place-based health foundation. We have granted over $3 million to date to nonprofits that surround our organization within a 10-mile radius. Since the inception of our foundation, we have granted and supported our community with initiatives that promote healthy families and children. And certainly early childhood education rises to the top of those initiatives. One of the initiatives that is something that we focus on in our foundation is Pottstown Early Action for Kindergarten Readiness, also known as PEAK. And to date, we've granted a significant amount of funding to this organization that is spearheaded by the Pottstown School District. The approach to PEAK is unified, it's collaborative. We have several partners at the table, including parents. We want to make sure that children are addressed in a holistic way, that we support their education, their social emotional learning, their nutrition, and that we uplift families in the process. In addition to PEAK, we grant funds to other early childhood education programs in our community, and this initiative is near and dear to our heart. We want to be a partner with not only the candidates who are a part of this panel today, but all of our nonprofits, our parents, other stakeholders, so that we can make sure that our most valuable resource in our community, our children, are cared for and nurtured.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Aisha Cooper. Please put contact information for your various organizations in our chat so people can be in touch with you. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Bernie Dejanay, the Mainline Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Bernie.
Hi, good morning. Welcome, everyone. My name is Bernie Dagenet with the Mainline Chamber of Commerce, President and CEO here. We are an organization, most of our members are in Delaware, Chester, and Montgomery County, and a lot of the larger Philadelphia companies are also a member of our organization. Very interested in education. We represent employers. I want to thank all the candidates for being on the call today. Just a couple of facts as to why this is important for the Chamber of Commerce community and the fact that different chambers are involved. There's the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, which has a Center for Education and Workforce that I've been involved with as a volunteer, has done some research, and they've come up with data this summer, over the summer, that 40% of employers are offering additional child care assistance because we want our employees to be able to get to our companies, of course. And more than 1 in 5 parents surveyed at the end of July were unsure whether they would fully return to work, in large part due to child care issues. There's some research that was done by a Penn State professor that I was looking at this morning that said that 4% of childcare organizations that were surveyed were saying that without some additional help to offset the cost of implementing COVID-19 guidelines and reduced enrollments, that they were at risk of going out of business. And that's an impact of up to 1,000 childcare operations in Pennsylvania, as the research has showed there. And then it's a barrier, right, to creating a strong workforce in our region. And the State Chamber of Business and Industry has some research that tells us that $3.47 billion is lost annually because of childcare cost breakdowns, because of childcare breakdowns. And last but certainly not least this is an issue of equality. When you're thinking about issues relating to violence and housing access to health care, that high quality childcare is key to lifting people up, providing them with opportunity. And that's important for our economy, for our region, for our employers. So I'm happy to be part of the program today. Thank you, Cherry.
Thank you so much, Bernie, for those remarks. And thank you to all of our speakers for being here today. I'm going to jump right in because we like to keep things on time and we have a lot to get to today. As I mentioned in our opening remarks, again, to our speakers, if you could put contact information for your organizations in the chat so that those watching and following along can get in touch with you, that would be really greatly appreciated. Let me just explain to you quickly how this will work. We have 5 candidates here, and I saw that they're all here today. Thank you so much for attending. We will give each of them 90 seconds to answer questions. When you get the time cue, please complete your thought. So you'll get the full 90 seconds and then a cue to complete that thought, and then we'll move along. We'll rotate who begins to answer each question, and we will also take questions in the chat to the extent that we have time available. We will get to as many of those questions as possible. We have members of the organizations that are part of the Children Matter Action Fund who will present some of these questions to our candidates. So candidates, I hope you are ready. Again, those candidates are Paul Friel from House District 26, Jonathan Casa, House District 151. We have Nancy Geinst, House District 152, Jill Denon, House District 147, and Napoleon Nelson, House District 154. And here to present our first question to our candidates is Stacy Woodland, CEO for the Tri-County Area YWCA. Stacy, you now have the floor.
Thank you so much. So as Sherry said, I'm Stacy Woodland, CEO of YWCA Tri-County Area. The mission of YWCAs across the country is to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. One of the core programs of our YWCA located in Pottstown is early education. We serve children ages 6 weeks up through 6th grade. And we, like many other early education centers around, have jumped in to support students who only have opportunity for virtual learning in their school district. So we are serving kids all day long, school-age children all day long with virtual learning support. And it is challenging. And so I want to go right into the first question. COVID-19 has had a significant impact on early childhood care, early childhood education, and early childhood education providers, and has also really forced many in the child care system to close or be in danger of closing. Many programs have reopened, like ours. We reopened in June, but there are many really not sure that they can stay open if they have reopened or if they are going to be able to reopen. Addressing the impact of COVID-19 on the infrastructure of early education programs is critical to our families, to our businesses, to the dignity of the children who attend these and need these services. What do you think is important to help families and young children to operate effectively in this environment?
And I'd like that question to be presented to the candidates in this order: Paul, Jonathan, Nancy, Jill, and then Napoleon.
Great. So I'm Paul Friel. I'm a candidate in 26th District, which does include Pottstown. So thanks, Stacy, for the question. So I think COVID-19 exposed a lot of vulnerabilities in our education system, not just early child education, but all through K through 12. Pottstown, for an example, took about like 2 months longer to get up and online and give kids an opportunity to get education than did right next door to O&J Roberts, where I'm a school board director. I work with the Pottstown Advocacy Group for Fair Funding. And I think it's really the early child education and fair and equitable funding and is really intertwined here, because equity in education and the disproportionate funding of education hurts communities, and it hurts poorer communities and communities of color more so than anywhere else. 51% of our kids in Pennsylvania are in underfunded districts. Those underfunded districts also have a higher and greater need for childcare and for funding for childcare, because mom and dad are more likely going to have to leave the home to work. They don't have the financial support systems for childcare, and then we need to provide it. And I think, what we're doing, I hear it all the time. Oh, well, it's tough to address this because we'll hurt this school district because they have money, or we'll hurt this community. How are we going to fund this stuff? And I think it's about the priorities of, we're not hurting school districts, we're hurting children, right? We're hurting kids that don't have opportunities. We need internet access and hotspots for these kids. I know you probably all are dealing with that if you're providing some of those services for the virtual learning environments. Is a lot of these kids don't necessarily have the technology nor the internet access without some type of support. We should be providing that in communities all across Pennsylvania. We should, small business assistance. All these childcare providers are small businesses, and we've been giving relief to large companies and big corporations and worried about Wall Street, and we should be worried about Main Street. And so the funding, the grants, the loans, the access to capital should be really directed and going towards small businesses. Specifically, when we're talking about early childhood education, I think we should be partnering.
Paul.
Yeah, we should be partnering with the local school districts and the local community funding sources with those childcare education, because I think they're one and the same in terms of the health of the community.
Thank you so much for that answer. Jonathan, you're up next.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with everyone. And for my fellow candidates that have shown up this morning, I hope that this sends a message that what we will do together in Harrisburg, this is a priority. We all have busy things to do, and it's campaign season, but to be here sends a message as to what our priorities are as candidates when we get to Harrisburg. I'm also a school board director at North Penn. I'm Jonathan Casa from the 151st. That's Montgomery Township, Horsham Township, parts of Upper Dublin, and a slice of Wissahickon School District as well. And we need to just have the baseline, and sad that I have to say this, but we've accepted COVID's real. And there's not much we're going to be able to do over the next 2 years. Young children, vaccines, it could take twice as long as it does for adults. So that means we have to accept the science and have protocols that we can follow and that we can support our small businesses And especially for early childhood education, we need to begin planning now for the long term. One of the things that we must manage safely, it's not going to be eliminated. So what that means with COVID is we have to manage. We have to make sure that our metrics are clear in our businesses, our communities, and across our state. The metrics for positivity rates, for testing that has a quick turnaround, PPEs that are in place for our essential workers and our children. That is what will keep us open. But we also have to have a culture of safety. Our entire culture is changing. We need to make sure that children understand this. That they're not as much the problem as the adults in most of the situations that I've encountered as a school board director. We need to have contact tracing that's robust. In Montgomery County, we have a 36% non-compliance rate. It's very tough to keep open our small businesses and schools and provide childcare if the citizens, families, community members aren't cooperating with public health goals. And that's going to require effectiveness in communication, people pulling together as opposed to being divided by politics. COVID isn't political, and we need to make sure if we're going to put our children first and our youngest ones in their education, that we make it a priority to mask up if we're going to open up.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Nancy.
Hi, my name is Nancy Gens. I'm running in the 152nd, which includes part of the 63rd Ward in Philadelphia, Bryn Athyn, Hatboro, Lower Moreland, Upper Moreland, and a part of Upper Dublin. There's not too much that I can add between Paul Friel and Jonathan Casa, because they've covered all the points that are so important. I mean, our children must be our priority. And if we don't have equitable funding spread out, to keep these small businesses like our Play and Learns, and, in my area, there's 4 or 5 different child learning centers, that participate in this program. But the amount of money that you're only allowed to make in order to get a subsidy from the state, those subsidies have to be raised. I mean, if you look at Play and Learn, which is a 5-star outlet place, I believe their rates are about $70 a day for a full-time child being in there. And the level of income at poverty level, or for a 2-person household, which would be like a mom and a child, is around $35,000. It's $700 a week if they're working full-time. And so half of that is going to childcare. So how much, you need a lot of subsidy to be able to have that family still functioning. So we need to find a way to make these subsidies larger for our parents so that they can take advantage of the early childhood learning centers that are so important to us. I just can't stress how important our children are, and we have to find a way to do this.
Thank you so much. Jill?
Yes, thank you for having me. As a school board member and someone who has substitute taught for 12 years, this is a very, very critical issue right now. And I am representing the 147th, which is the western tip of Montgomery County, and it borders right on Berks County. So, but I'm only representing those places in Montgomery County. It goes from basically Douglas, Montgomery, all the way to Lower and Upper Salford. It's really simple. I'm just going to echo everything my fellow candidates have said. We need to provide resources and funding, and we need to increase those resources and funding for our child care centers. We need to support them now with PPE and grants and funding for thermometers and protective equipment for our child care educators. That is plain and simple what we need. We need more money. And as someone who served on the local Y board for 9 years, most of what I did was raise money so we could subsidize those families that could not afford the Y childcare. We subsidized early childhood activities for those children. So and with COVID and with all the extra money that is available, to be quite honest, there's just not enough. There's not enough money. You can't raise enough money now for the additional expenses. So I think it's plain and simple. We just need to have more money.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Napoleon Nelson.
Sure. Thank you for the question, and thank you all for being here. Again, I'm Napoleon Nelson in the 154th District. Covers all of Cheltenham, Jenkintown, and Springfield. So for me, this question has always been very personal and a passionate cause of mine, because there's some underlying components that I want to make sure I put out on the table now, that you appreciate where I'm coming from. Maslow's hierarchy of needs suggests that in all things, we put safety and security and nutrition at the forefront of any conversation. So in this environment, as the question asks, what we always need to make sure of is that children are safe. Parents have the opportunity to earn a paycheck. Educators have the opportunity to be socially distanced and care for their both paychecks and their personal safeties as well. And right now we're realizing this tension that says we're not really in anything close to an optimal learning environment because of the distances that's required. And as Jonathan said, to some degree, yes, we just need to accept that that is part of our reality now. We are going to be in a suboptimal learning environment for the, I don't want to say foreseeable future, but until we really get our hands around what's happening and how we can ensure personal safety and personal health first and foremost. Now, what we then need to do, and what will probably be an underlying theme throughout the rest of this conversation, is appreciate right now our tying of childcare with high quality education. And childcare and high quality education right now is what we're kind of debating, and how we're investing in providing educational opportunities within that childcare space. But to some degree, part of the solution is going to be investing in really high quality public learning opportunities online and through distance learning. And that will allow us hopefully to be able to really meld some of these situations. We'll get to more of that throughout the conversation, but that's where we wrestle. Most importantly though, we kind of just have to accept that where we are now means safety and security have to be first.
Thank you so much, Napoleon, for those comments. I'm going to move to the next question now. Using last fiscal year as our base, since it was pre-pandemic, approximately 32,000 children were enrolled in state-funded high-quality pre-K. However, that number stands in a stark contrast to the nearly 102,000 eligible children in rural, suburban, and urban communities without access to a high-quality, publicly funded program. To our candidates, what are your thoughts on the importance of high-quality pre-K for our children, and how can Pennsylvania significantly increase funding slots for families and these early learners? I heard y'all talk about we need money. How can you accomplish that? This time we're gonna start with Jonathan, go to Nancy, then to Jill, Napoleon, then Paul. Jonathan Casa, you're up first.
Thank you very much. I ran for North Penn School Board, to implement full day kindergarten. It was one of the top priorities that we had, and we were able to implement that within 1 year. And the feedback has been phenomenal. We all know the return on investment. Sadly, across Pennsylvania, our state doesn't fund initiatives like full day kindergarten. Pennsylvania is still 44th out of the entire country in public education funding. So what does that mean for pre-K? It means it's even less of a priority in Harrisburg. So what we need to do, we've learned from full day kindergarten, it's like balancing your checkbook 12 years ahead of time. I work in higher education and campus safety, and I've worked throughout K-12 through higher ed. We need to approach this as a holistic vision for the entire state that has from pre-K all the way through master's degree programs, one continuous plan to make sure that we lift the tide for everyone. And how we're able to do that is Harrisburg's priorities are upside down for the last 10 years. It's why we're 44th in public education funding, 47th in public funding of higher education in our public systems. Instead of hundreds of millions of dollars in tax breaks to frackers, this happened just a couple months ago. That money can go to the priorities of pre-K and our public school systems that need this money now more than ever. Instead of hundreds of millions of dollars to unaccountable charter schools, reforms that haven't been made to a law since 1997. We will make that a priority in Harrisburg, a top priority. The funding is there. The willpower and the priority needs to happen. Now, what strengthens public education strengthens communities, and that's what strengthens our entire state economy and our workforce. That's why pre-K is so important. It's not going to be easy, but we can find the revenue when we make education, pre-K through college, a priority in Pennsylvania again.
Thank you, Jonathan. Nancy, you have the
Yes,
floor.
thank you. It all comes down to the revenue. We need to look at alternative revenue sources. Our fracking industry is getting away with whatever they want to get away with. And we have to make them accountable to the residents in Pennsylvania. We need to tax them at a better rate than the small amount of money that the state is getting from them at this point. And charter schools. We have way too much money going to private and charter schools, where we have to keep our children a priority. I will not stop saying this. And we have to find a way to fund this. And the funding is out there. And it always seems that whenever Harrisburg can't get a budget in order, one of the first committees they go after are human services. And this has got to stop.
Thank you so much. Jill, you have the floor.
Yes, speaking specifically about pre-K and early childhood learning, I think that there's a couple of things that we can do. Number one, I think we do need to up the ceiling for where, or maybe lower the ceiling is the correct term, for where we need to qualify for some of these families to get funding for pre-K programs. I know on my school board, we last year finally were able to get a pre-K counts program at our school, which has now 60 students enrolled in the morning and the afternoon programs. But what did it take in order to do that? It took someone to be able to be aware of the program and to write the grant. Fortunately, as a school board member who also sits on the Berks County Intermediate Unit, I knew about this program, but it's a matter of getting our administrators and our staff, with all the other things they have to do, to take time to write the grants, and then somebody to administer the program. Again, that takes some money. It wasn't a lot of money, but it took some money to do it, and it took the will and the effort to do that. So I think if we can expand the pre-K counts program, and I commend the governor and our state for actually acknowledging the importance of pre-K and early childhood development, I think that we can actually put more resources. And I think that we already know, and the research already shows, that birth to 5 are the most important developmental years for a child. So I think that by providing the high quality childcare and education, and putting more money into the pre-K counts program, and finding a separate funding source, and I don't know exactly what that will be, but I think that we need to work on that and have some innovative ideas towards that.
Thank you so much, Jill. Napoleon, you're up now.
Absolutely, thank you. And I agree with what everyone else has already said, right? So we do have the money to invest in pre-K. Especially relative to the state's budget, or even the amount of money that the state and local school districts are spending on education. Spending more on high quality pre-K is certainly within the realm of possibility. We have the funds. We can certainly increase the funding pool by looking at how we are taxing other major entities. Again, we talked a little bit about fracking. I also look at many of our internet retailers as an area that we are certainly not capitalizing from a taxing revenue for our local school district. But I will say that there are many programs that we just need to continue to identify as priority. So I am on the board of our community college. I know the importance of high quality, I'll call it secondary, post-secondary education to ensuring job readiness. I appreciate and was on the board of our local school district, and I'm happy to see that many of our districts now certainly have a full day kindergarten, but they're not all there. Many of them will have breakfast programs for students who need. we're not all there. And some of us can appreciate and are spending dollars towards both pre-K and even summer enrichment opportunities. There's so many avenues that we as a state and a state legislature can continue to invest in that we know will have tangible academic benefits for our communities and for our society. We just need to get Harrisburg working again. We just need to make sure that what we are doing today, we can do with an understanding of the benefits will come 5 and 10 years down the line. And I think some of that is even, that's why I think the beauty of having the Chamber of Commerce in this conversation is businesses are used to looking at and investing in programs that have a payout 5 or 10 years down the line. Harrisburg is not. And so that's the beauty of what we get to do is build that coalition. So thank you guys for bringing this together.
All right, thank you, Napoleon, for that. Last but not least, we have Paul. And unmute yourself, Paul.
So first, if I unmute, the answer comes much better. So I'm gonna follow on what Napoleon said, because I think I like the way he framed it. This is an investment we're going to make in our communities and our kids. And I believe that that investment is a real investment that'll have an ROI. I think when you have, affordable and accessible childcare, you have a workforce that isn't taking off or doesn't have to struggle with childcare issues in order to get there. So there's a benefit not just for the kids and education. There's a community and economic benefit in the long term because you have stability in your workforce in that area, because you have access to high quality education, high quality childcare. Listen, we all know we're facing COVID. We're going to have $5 billion, probably less in the state of Pennsylvania. And it's about prioritization. Like where do the dollars that we take in tax revenue yield the biggest return on investment for us? And you have to believe that when we're investing in small businesses, when we're investing in our kids, that's where the return on investment is. I think some of the revenue taxes that we can close loopholes on are certainly the extraction tax with Marcellus Shale. As long as we can allocate it towards education, the racehorse funding, which is a $240 million funding that we could maybe move towards education or towards these things, I think they have to be targeted. I think there's corporate loopholes that allude, some of my candidates alluded to. Closing, Amazon pays no corporate taxes in Pennsylvania, yet I have yet to see an Amazon delivery not take advantage of a Pennsylvania road that was paid for by taxpayer, dollars. So how do we make sure that we close some of these loopholes, that we have the appropriate revenue sources, and that we look at and prioritize in investments? Because those dollars will come back to our communities if we have stable childcare, if we have stable education, and if we have investments that make sense. It's about investing in Main Street and not worrying about Wall Street right now, because that is where I think the biggest economic engine that'll allow our economy to turn back, that for families to thrive and be healthy financially, which is going to help our kids. So, and then I think we can look at extending some of the programs like free and reduced lunch, and some of those programs that do that to help food insecure and housing insecure is how does we tie our childcare into that, because those are sources of food for these kids. How do we put those programs in place, and do we have that in our priorities set right? So thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. And we have a quick follow-up from our audience, and we're going to give the candidates 30 seconds in this instance to follow up. How will you convince, this is great, right? Everybody says we need more funding. There's ways to do this, but how will you convince fellow Pennsylvania legislators to increase the funding for high quality early childhood education centers to remain open? And, who should we go to first? We'll go to Nancy first, then to Jill, Napoleon, Paul, and then Jonathan, and take 30 seconds because we want to go right into the next question.
It all comes down to flipping the House. You have to flip at least 9 seats, and you will have, control of the State House, and that's what it comes down to. That's why this election is so very, very important.
Thank you. And Jill.
So yeah, as a public policy person, and that's what my background is in, I do think that we need to use actually some talking points and some statistics to show the benefits to our economy and to the Commonwealth to having resources be diverted to early childhood education and early childhood learning and childcare, quality childcare. So I think that if we can also take that tactic when we do have the majority, I think that will help us in diverting some of those funds, because everybody has obviously their priorities.
Yeah, Napoleon.
Sorry, I was muted. I didn't want to start talking. Yeah, I agree that, listen, flipping the house makes this much, much easier. Talking about the demographics, talking about the economics of an investment in this case also would be very helpful. And to me, I also say, listen, they have child care concerns in Carbon County. They have child care concerns in Dauphin. They have child care concerns in every, in Erie and in every corner of this state. So when you identify solutions that seem to be nonpartisan, you go everywhere and bring that message of, I know what concerns us in Cheltenham is concerning you,
Yes.
in Lower Dauphin. So
Thank you, Napoleon. Paul, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think we're all on the right track here. Obviously, flipping the house is a tactic, but I think understanding the data and what really drives the investment and return on investment, and to Napoleon's point, we have the same issues with childcare, whether it's rural Pennsylvania, whether it's our farming communities. Only about 25% of them do not have access to internet, don't have access to child care education. The same as some of our inner city or our poorer communities have the same things on a different side of the coin. So I think the solution, we just got to show how this affects you and your kids and why these dollars are necessary and what the return on that investment is. I think if we do that, we'll make our case.
All right, last word to Jonathan, 30 seconds.
Yeah, having our priorities straight means electing people who can speak passionately and just fly the flag for this issue. And there's a reason why you've got only challengers on this call right now. We're challenging the status quo. So it's not just about flipping the house, but being able to have the adult conversations in Harrisburg. These conversations aren't happening. They're not allowed. Republicans in Harrisburg don't want to talk about it. What we realize, though, as challengers, is this is a bipartisan issue. It has a partisan blockage right now in Harrisburg. That needs to change.
All right, thank you so much. I will now turn to Kim Follett, CEO of Play and Learn in Montgomery County, for the next question. Kim, you have the floor.
Morning, everyone. My name is Kim Follett, and I am the CEO of Play and Learn Centers. And I wanted to thank Nancy for the recognition of our work in Hatboro, and thank all of you today for taking the time to learn more about the challenges being faced by childcare providers as businesses, and also for your interest in the important role that childcare plays in the lives of children and the support of families and the social and economic health of our communities in Montgomery County. Play and Learn is a nonprofit organization that operates 12 child care centers in Montgomery County and in a number of in the districts in which you're running. We serve a range of communities across the county, and we provide child care to a diversity of families, including private pay families, families who participate in child care works, and children receiving care through Early Head Start, pre-K counts, and the new infant and toddler contracted slots pilot, which is a terrible name, but one I want you to remember because it's a program, a state subsidized program that supports childcare for infants and toddlers, and it's a predecessor and serves as a feeder program for pre-K counts that Jill spoke about. And so it's really an important program for supporting families going back to work, and for children getting the supports and services and care that they need earlier in their development. We also participate in the state's Keystone Stars quality program, and all of our centers operate at the highest standards of that program. As you've all said so eloquently and repeatedly, the provision of quality childcare is essential for the safety, the wellness, and the development of children, and it requires significant investment. And that brings us to our next question. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the need for high quality childcare outweighed the supply, with only 43% of licensed childcare capacity meeting high quality standards. In addition, the number of childcare providers had declined over the past 5 years. As you know, the state's subsidized childcare program, Childcare Works, helps working families defray the costs of childcare. However, the state's subsidy rates do not cover the cost of delivering that high quality care. What measures would you support to address this gap in payment and shortage of access to high quality childcare for working families, as I noted, especially infants and toddlers?
All right, and that question, 90 seconds. And we really have to stick to time for this one. Jill, Napoleon, Paul, Jonathan, and then Nancy. Jill, you're up.
So yes, again, I think that we need to commit to an investment in early childhood education. And I'm really happy to see that with my work at the BCIU that they have actually focused on infant and toddler. Because if we can get funding to have infants and toddlers get some quality childcare education, those dividends will pay off tenfold in the end. So I think it's a matter of moving some resources around and trying to fill that gap, because the earlier we get quality childcare, the better it is. And I think that this has just kind of been an issue that's come to the forefront. I know that I did not even realize before I got on the IU that there was a subsidized program. So we need to start funneling a few more dollars into that subsidized program for early childhood, especially infants and toddlers. And again, I would say lower the rate that parents have to make.
And I'll even just go right along to help you, Sherry. So I agree. I think there is a significant need for kind of help and advocacy in community centers, in our churches, and whatever organizations to help parents appreciate where they can be best paired with the optimal childcare and high quality childcare space. And along with that, to be honest, I think that some of this conversation will continue to work towards, a publicly funded pre-K to 12 or pre-K to 14 space. So I do anticipate there being a little bit more of an investment from local school districts in subsidizing and eventually perhaps providing some level of high quality pre-K programming. Again, the distinction between child care and pre-K programming, I think, is one of those areas that we may or may not get to address, but I can certainly appreciate really starting to lean in and invest in that space from our publicly funded institutions, especially our K-12 districts.
So, I'll reiterate what everybody else is saying here. I think, understanding what are the cost drivers here, what's impacting the revenue towards some of these providers. So do we have the ratio correct of income testing for when you qualify and when you don't qualify for assistance? Because if families are coming off assistance too early, and you're putting a financial stress on a community and families. And I think there's probably some look there to say, do we have that correct? We probably don't. We need to probably allow folks to get more, expand what that income range is for that income test and provide more, as people are stood up. And I think that'll help our child care providers and our families alike. And then again, it's just going back to, do we have the rate? The other thing I would look at too, and that we need to understand is do we pay and do we have the correct, reimbursement for pay scale in a child care place? Because if we're making these assumptions on the lowest common denominator, we're always going to be in the low end of paying, and we need to be reasonable. What does it take to operate correctly with quality right? So to be able to hire and resource and staff one of these locations. So I think we need to look at those formulas and make sure that we have the right numbers and those metrics when we're measuring on how these reimbursements take place. Thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan, then Nancy.
And this is about more than just living wage. It's about a moral wage. When we went 100% virtual education at the end of July, we had many parents who were working full time, met with one parent in particular for a number of hours with Congresswoman Dean, with State Rep Liz Hanbidge, State Rep Steve Malagari, Senator Maria Collette, and myself as a school board director and my other colleagues, to learn that that parent earning $15 an hour was not going to have a full-time subsidy when September 1st hit. Republicans in Harrisburg were on recess, they were on vacation, and they weren't addressing these needs. What came out of hours of meetings over weeks, eventually that was resolved temporarily. But what we have from Rep Hanbidge is House Bills 2629 and 2630, and they're to expand the Child Care Works program for those families who are just over the level, especially during pandemic, who need even more support. We need to make sure that we're reimbursing those costs that are incurred because of COVID-19 as children are now at home virtually learning, or as parents need to return to work and children need to go to their pre-K programs. This is something we have to focus on. Not yesterday, whether spectators can see high school sports. We should be talking about these bills and making sure that families and our children are the #1 priority in Harrisburg.
All right, Nancy.
I'm sorry. Yes, I think that we have to look more towards, we're never going to get the subsidies up what they need to be. I mean, that's the reality of it. For our pre-Ks, to have some quality education out there. I think that we have to really look at publicly funded pre-Ks through our public school system. And I know that we can find ways to afford this. We're looking at a number of ways at the State House now, but they couldn't put it to a vote in the last session. Raising the your personal income tax by 1% in the higher brackets of income, and putting 1% more, on your sales tax would greatly fund our education system. So I just think that, we're just never going to hit where the subsidies should be, and it should be, publicly funded. And I really believe that. I mean, this is an investment in our future. Our children are our future.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for those comments. And thank you to all of our candidates. Given the time, we're going to go to closing remarks. And would each of you take a minute and just sort of encapsulate your thoughts on this issue of early childhood education? And, please leave your contact information and also put it in the chat once you have concluded. And we'll start with Napoleon on closing remarks. Then we'll go to Paul, Jonathan, Nancy, and Jill will be last.
Sure, thank you. And I think what's important is that we, as I kind of teased throughout, early childhood education is education. And so when we think about what public education is in this state and country, we understand it to be a commitment by the community in the future of that community. And so we should not leave the early childhood, or again, the post-secondary, if that's required, to, I don't want to call it market forces, but we need to make sure that we're investing in that as a public entity. And so I certainly imagine that there will be a significant portion of the early childhood education and the high quality portion of childcare that can come from that public education space. And so how we find and meld public education and public educational opportunities with childcare will be a puzzle that I don't yet know the answer to. I know all of those who are still on school boards right now are figuring out what that looks like in the K-12 space, and now we're adding the pre-K onto it. But physical space and childcare and the very important investment in education right now are really, they're button heads right now, and we're finding those solutions. And I believe that solution will be able to be wonderfully applied to the early childhood space. Thank you guys for joining us.
And please mention your website, Napoleon.
Sure. You can find more about Napoleon4154.com. I'll throw it into the chat. But thank you all, and we look forward to joining you in Harrisburg.
All right, Paul, final remarks.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate it. I think this is a great discussion because it's really about, discussion of priorities and where our investment lies and where do we think a return on our investment is. We have an issue with our communities and with COVID. How do we help families best? There is an ROI out there. There is a economic reason, and I believe it's this. I think we either pay now and help kids and put interventions now, or we're going to pay later. We're going to have extra dollars that we're going to spend later in these children's educational career to help them recover or gain and get back up to speed to where they should be because they've missed an opportunity. And I think it's more expensive to do it later than to do it now. So I think if you're investing early, it's less dollars than if we're correcting later. So I think we got to get the facts and we got to get it out there and we got to make the case that this is the responsible and economically responsible thing to do. And I think and it's, again, helping our small businesses thrive, helps our families thrive, helps our community thrive. I think it's all about, and that's where our focus needs to be. You can see my website at paulfriel.com or go to Facebook at Paul for PA. And I thank you guys all for the opportunity today.
Wonderful. Jonathan.
Thank you very much. I did put my website in the chat, and it's casaforstaterep.com. Appreciate having this opportunity to speak to everyone. Yes, the return on investment about helping students. Someone had put in the chat $1 in that of investment in early pre-K ends up having $7 in benefits because of what we don't pay later. I ran award-winning programs in Maryland in which we invested in making sure students got their degrees and returned to school. That was on the other end of this continuum. When we're talking about with pre-K, it's that same type of investment. If we're going to build back better, we need to invest in educating better. And pre-K childcare is a down payment on our families, investment in our communities, and that ensures our state's success and our workforce going forward.
Thank you so much. I think next up is Nancy, and then last word to Jill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for having us here today. This has been very educating to me on this issue. I've done some research over the past few days, and there is still so much to learn. But the bottom line is that our children are our most important resource here in this country. And we have to give them everything they need to blossom into the people that they're going to become. And this is going to cost money. We need to find that money, and we need to get started with that. It's going to take a lot of discussion, and I just hope that that we can flip the house here and continue with these discussions and find the money to get these programs started. And it's just so important. It's very important. So you can reach me at Nancy, #4, pahouse.com. Thanks for having me today.
Jill, final word.
Sure. So as for me, the goal is really simple. It's to get to Harrisburg and to have people understand that in order to have to bring everyone up, we need to make sure that our children are ready day one for kindergarten. I think full day kindergarten should be universal, and I think that childcare and pre-K learning should be universal. What informed me the most about this issue is when I went one day to substitute in a kindergarten class, and there were 18 children, and of those 18 children, 9 of them did not have any pre-K education. They may have been in childcare, but the childcare might have been in someone's home. So they did not have social skills, they didn't have the emotional skills, they didn't have that early childhood development that they so needed for kindergarten. And what I learned was the absolute importance of that. It's jillforpa.com. by the way.
Wonderful. And I just want to say thank you to all the candidates who participated in this important discussion about early childhood education. Our children are our future, and we need to make them a top priority. And so we appreciate all of your thoughtfulness in responding to these very important questions. To Paul Friel, House District 26, Jonathan Casa, House District 151, Nancy Gunst, House District 152, Jill Denon, House District 157, and Napoleon Nelson, House District 154. We thank you for your time and attention to this matter. Again, my name is Cherry Gregg. I'm the Community Affairs Reporter for KYW News Radio and host of Flashpoint that airs every Saturday and Sunday on KYW and 5 other Intercom stations. You can find out more at kywnewsradio.com/flashpoint. Thank you to Children Matter Action Fund for arranging this. I'd like to pass the baton back to Marvetta Coleman for the official closing of today's event.
Thank you, Cherry, and thank you for that wonderful keeping our candidates conversation moving. And to our candidates, thank you so much for your participation. Certainly not least to our listening audience. Please, please, please visit not only the childrenmatteractionfund.org website, but also go to all of the candidates' websites and Facebook pages and other information sources. Give them a call. Talk with their campaigns to learn more about their positions on the issues that are important to you, particularly those that relate to this topic matter of early learning care and early learning education. We just want to remind everyone that Children Matter Action Fund is a nonpartisan organization. We extended invitations to all the candidates in these 5 races, regardless of party, inclusive of party, Republican, Democrat, and Libertarian. And so we know that the needs and the considerations and the concern for our children is also nonpartisan. We thank you for your participation. We certainly look forward to continuing these levels of candidate conversations. And we want to remind you all to make sure that you are casting your vote on November the 3rd, either in person or making sure that you've taken care of getting your mail-in applications in for your ballot. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the week.